This episode of TWIMMO is brought to you by Hulu Plus. For a free 2-week trial, head on over to huluplus.com/gamebreaker. Use that URL, you're getting yourself an extra free week.
Game Breaker TV.
Oh yeah, hello Internet for Take Two. If you're not in pre-show, you're doing it wrong. Welcome to This Week in MMO episode 184 for April 11th, 2014. You're watching Game Breaker TV. I'm Mike Byrne, and on today's show, we're not talking about DayZ. We're not even going to talk about Rust. But we are talking about H1Z1, and joining me for that chat, as he did last week, Mr. Troy Blackburn. How are you, sir?
Hello. I'm doing well, doing very well. There should be no cat cameos this week. She has been quarantined in the other room to prevent zombie infestation.
Oh, see, and the internet was very happy about the cat last week.
Yeah, I think they may have liked the cat more than they liked me, but hey, what can you do?
That'll happen.
That is a true story. That is a true story.
Also,
cats are more important than we are on the internet.
Yes.
Also on the line, you can hear him. You've missed him for weeks, but we don't know where he is. Joining us live via sat phone somewhere in the Ozark Mountains, Mr. Gary Gannon.
I am deep, dark in a cave somewhere doing very important things. I cannot disclose my location, but I am very much glad to be here today. Thank you very much.
It's like we're doing a CNN live report. We had to blindfold Gary to get him where he is. He's going to get us the information. So the big news this week, guys, was Sony Online Entertainment revealed H1Z1. Granted, we did know about the name for a while, pretty much back when Landmark and EQ Next were getting teased at SOE Live. H1Z1 slipped out as far as the patent or trademarking stuff goes. We thought it might have been a code name, but this is actually the real thing, and if you thought about it for a minute, it's pretty much what we expected, right, Gary? It's not the worst thing in the world.
I really like the name. Do you guys not like the name?
I like the
nice
play on
the fact that it's a
H1N1.
virus.
Yeah, I like the play on the H1N1. I think, though, that if you're not horribly hip to what they were trying to do, the name doesn't sell a damn thing to you just looking at the name.
I can see that. I don't know. I'm kind of excited about the game.
Hiding? Well, that's probably why you're in the damn mountains.
I'm in the mountains hiding
avoid.
from the internet because I'm
Right.
excited for the H1Z1. I'm trying to get rid of it. Caught the H1Z1.
Zombies, sandbox survival, kind of a MMO mashup maybe of like DayZ with the PlanetSide 2 graphics engine. All three of us could have called this. Everybody watching this show definitely could have called this. Troy, do you think maybe this should have been held back as like a surprise? Not at all. No teases until now.
Well, I definitely think I've seen this somewhere before. I can't think of where off the top of my head.
Just a few places.
But I mean, they say that it's going to be ready to play here pretty soon. So I mean, if it's going to be ready to play in some state or another, sure, go ahead and announce it. As long as we're not waiting too long. And of course, we'll talk about a game later on that maybe waited too long. But if it's getting ready to play here pretty quick, sure, go ahead and let us know. Let us get excited for it and get ready to jump in and see what you got.
I don't think they could have hid this any better, though. What about you, Gary? As soon as they announced, or Smedley announced, that we're working on something else, that was it. The internet hit the patent and trademark sites to find it. There was no way to really hide that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, initially the Game Breaker peeps all, because they made the original, SWG players have a place to come home, and I think a lot of players are confused by it, it's like a DayZ game, what happened to Star Wars? And we kind of knew it wasn't going to be Star Wars, that's for sure, the IP side. But, will they pull off all the things that DayZ can't seem to do right now, or having a hard time to do, or taking too long to do, DayZ, I feel like, is amazing in what it is, but there are certain aspects to it that players are longing for, which are more like massive world instead of shards, things like that. Being able to just create. But I don't know. It's a fine line balance of it. It's going to be interesting to see if SOE can pull off the visceral feeling of what DayZ captured. And we've watched all these other zombie survival horror games pop up after the explosion of DayZ. And personally, I played a bunch of them, and I always go back to DayZ. Like I always go back to DayZ. Like it has this feeling about it. I don't know if it's part of I attribute part of it to the clunkiness of it and just its sort of quirkiness. I almost find it endearing, but there's something about it that actually creates terror, and I think that's going to be the hardest thing for anybody to come along and create. You can say like, oh, we're going to have huge cities, or we're going to have this, and it's going to be open world, and it's going to be player created, and it's going to be massive, one big thing, and that's all great, but if we're not terrified of other players and people in this game, I don't know.
Well, exactly. I mean, you've got the big AAA studio here. You've got a big AAA budget, and they're going to produce what we assume is going to be a big AAA game. But in that, there's always the risk you lose touch with some of the customers who kind of been through the bumps and the growing pains of DayZ. And at the end of the day, do you end up missing what made them fall in love with DayZ to begin with?
Yeah, and you could argue that the whole zombie thing is overplayed and Sony's late to the party. And I don't want to focus on that, but you're either going to play a zombie game or you're not at this point. Most of us are at least going to give it a try just because we like zombie games and we like what Sony does in most cases. But the part that scares me about this the most, ironically, is the term MMO being used in conjunction with this, because you mentioned it a little bit, Gary, but the thing that makes DayZ and games like that really, really compelling to me is the small nature of it. Not the fact that I may be in a starting zone or a starting city with 200 some other people, but the fact that I may be on this island, starter city, starter zone, and there's only 6 people. And
see, I am looking forward to the big MMO aspect if somebody can pull it off. Basically, to encapsulate what I've been looking for first, personally, like what I think, you want EVE Online on the ground. And wrap it in whatever you want, whether it's zombies or whatever, whatever you want to do there, that's fine, wrap it whatever. But if you can give me like that massive world somehow with a ground plane and a character that I can see and run around with and make stuff and have an economy and sell things, and like make it all player driven and make it all player versus player sort of centric of with fighting and warfare and all that stuff, that's the win. But nobody's been able to figure it out, and I think the reason nobody's been able to figure it out with the EVE model anyway on the ground is because EVE does like some pretty interesting things to give you the illusion that that place is gigantic of how it actually scales out, and it's space, so it's pretty easy to populate space. I don't know. I'm looking for this massive sort of world. I think it could be really interesting if they do it right, but it's a hard design.
Yeah, it's gonna have to be designed perfectly. Otherwise, you totally lose that I'm alone atmosphere. And when you're killing a zombie or 2 zombies, and all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 on you, if there's 400 people around that are also trying to kill the same targets anyway, then you totally lose that tension. It's gone. Yep. So that's going to be the delicate balance point. Is the MMO?
Do you guys? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you guys feel at all that it's going to take away from some of the post-apocalyptic vibe of zombie survival if you log in and there's potentially just hundreds of players around you the moment you log in?
Sure it will.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I mean, part of the DayZ, the reason DayZ gets so intense is because of all the downtime you have where you don't even see anybody, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you could just, traverse, the landscape for an hour sometimes and not run into another player, and that's why you're sort of on the edge of your seat, and then when you do see somebody, you're freaking the F out.
Yeah, and you start playing and you get so absorbed that you start hearing things. Like, if you got a nice pair of headsets on, you swear somebody's walking or crawling in the grass behind you, and you can't find them. And that's such a great feeling that not many games can do. I like that MMOs are seeing zombies. That's a nice idea. But if they're trying to capture that tension, it's going to be such a
How do you capture that with thousands of players on a server? Right. I mean, I get your point. It's true. I think what has to happen is the world just has to be so gigantic.
Agreed.
It has to be so gigantic that people migrate into different parts of the world and set up your player cities kind of thing, but you are nowhere near each other to some extent, and you're very much in that survival feeling, with just these small pockets of people banding together, which is kind of what it would really be like, so in a zombie apocalypse.
And a lot of times, what the possibility of what could happen or what could be happening around you, like you said, is much more terrifying than anything that they can make actually happen on the screen. The anticipation of what could go wrong, it can be absolutely frightening.
So obviously we had Minecraft, and then Sony brought in Landmark, and then we had DayZ and the other game that's changed names multiple times now, and now H1Z1 out of that. So there's certainly an argument for clone battles going on here, but if Sony can make bigger, shinier, better versions of this of these different titles that people obviously love, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Or are they just strictly ripping things off, cloning them, making them shinier, and trying to make a buck on an existing idea?
It sounds to me like they're just ripping them off. I mean, it's zombie is goes back all the time to zombie apocalypse, right?
Right.
So wrapping it in a zombie game, I don't think some people might be a little bit mad about it because they feel it's a little bit played out, but at the same time, if it's a good game, whether it's wrapped in zombies or space or whatever, like people are going to check it out and play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So here's some of the details to get into what we were just kind of talking about. It is going to be a persistent, seamless world. It's going to be set in the U.S., and then my concern creeps in because they say thousands of players. Now, we don't know the divvying point on servers or max populations per location. We don't know any of that, but they do say thousands of players. So that's kind of my antsy point for this one so far. Sandbox with player-built shelters, and here's where Ganon's going to have a field day. Players build shelters, fortresses, cities, which kind of lends credence to the whole idea you were talking about, where the map's just going to have to be huge with all the players building these things and you stealing every single thing I ever farm up, you dirty son of a...
If they could create the map the size of the U.S. and make it somehow as large as the U.S., 2,000 players, it'll seem like nobody's around. That would be, I don't know if it's going to be that big, but obviously it's got to be massive because if they make the world just too small and there's whatever, say like 2,000 players on a server or however it's going to be set up there, it is going to, you're right, it's going to lose that feeling. You're just going to have constant battles between forts and things like that. And that's not going to be, I think, the experience that, but again, so here's the other thing is we keep going back and we keep using DayZ as sort of the point here, the reference, and maybe that's not the correct way to look at it, though, right? Like maybe it's just going to be a different experience, and it is going to be more about the player versus player and taking down forts, like kind of what old SWG was.
Yep. And when you get into these details,
moments.
they all scream SWG.
Yeah.
Some of the things we're going through right now, like the crafting system, you were talking about that. It's all based on the players making a ton of stuff to create the economy. Screams SWG, that type of thing. So, I agree with you. I'm hopeful for this one. I want this to be good. And if they could do a map of the U.S. where the scale of is 1 inch equals 1 inch, hey, that's awesome. More power to them. It takes 3 hours to walk from Pittsburgh to downtown or suburbs. From downtown.
Who knows? I mean, Star Wars Galaxies was a procedurally generated world, which if people know the techie and geeky stuff about what that means, it's if they go that route, I don't know, they could potentially have a world that is gigantic. I don't know how exactly that would work tech-wise, but I don't know, man. I think it could be interesting. I mean, it'd be nice to see something with their new engine, which looks great from PlanetSide 2.
Yep.
And in a sandbox environment.
Troy, you're more of a PvE guy. There's going to be multiple servers with different rule sets. Do you think maybe we're going to see a separation of player kill type play versus player versus zombie only type play?
I would imagine we're definitely going to get those kinds of servers, and I'm interested in that type of server because, I mean, a lot of games like DayZ and Rust, they just turn into giant PvP arenas a lot of times. And it would be nice to be able to take part in a world where it is the people cooperating against all the zombies, and yeah, there should be some faction fighting in between and a lot of conflict between those, but I don't want to just go out and just incessantly have to worry about somebody sneaking up behind me and just ganking me for no reason whatsoever. It would be nice to have rule sets that allow for different things because different people want to play different ways and experience the game without having to worry about it being just a giant PvP arena.
This is where we completely disagree.
Exactly. Different people like different things. I mean, just absolutely.
I just want the no Gary Gannon server, and then I'll be fine because I won't have to worry about it. That way he's not.
I feel like from a game development standpoint that if they had one type of server, one game, and that's all they're developing for, they could do a better job at doing that one thing.
Probably.
And if there was a zombie apocalypse and we're trying to go down this route of like survival realism, almost like simulator, the zombies might not be the most fearful thing in the goddamn game. It would be people.
I think
people.
I think
gotta feed
Gannon
my
just.
child. I need to get some water. I need milk. I'm going to shoot you in the face because you've got
That's exactly
stuff,
what I just heard too.
And we need it.
If there was a zombie apocalypse burn, I would have shot you in the face by now.
Exactly, but that's the thing of DayZ. Like the reason DayZ is so compelling is because the zombies are not that difficult to kill. Like they're not the real terror. They're not the threat.
That and Smedley's really into PvP. I mean, from everything we've ever seen him talk about or do, he's a PvP dog. So, yeah, I don't know. I kind of like, and I'm not into PvP, Gary, all that much, but I like the idea of if it's going to be that type of world, yes, there needs to be one rule set, and it's PvP. Since we're creating things, though, Player Studio, of course, enters the picture. That's Sony Online's feature that lets users sell items to other users, and they get a fraction of the... Did you know there's a guy that's made $100,000 off that damn thing already?
Wow, really?
100 grand. And it's a 60-40 split, isn't it? I think that's what it was. 60 to Sony, 40 to the player. When somebody buys
it was 100?
He's made 100 grand.
Wow, what are we doing on this show? Hang on, I'm hanging up.
Seriously. I wish I was a little more creative. Now, you mentioned we keep going back to DayZ. Unlike DayZ, they're really trying to push the social aspect that you talked about, Gary. They kind of liken this more towards The Walking Dead, where you would have alliances and rivals and groups of people that you would trust and roll with, and then everybody else can screw off and get shot in the face. They're leaning more towards Walking Dead than DayZ, which I think totally makes sense in an MMO environment.
Yeah, I mean, let players form small communities.
Yep.
That's what would happen. People would have to band together with different sort of... You'd have just how a society is built. Like in a zombie apocalypse, it would be all broken down and destroyed, and then human beings would kind of put it back together. And they'd find people that could do, woodworking or, crafting things, and people are going to go hunters and things like that. So you'd have
not a lot of use for a guy that does card tricks in this type of environment.
No, but that would be nice. We want to sit around the beans and the campfire, and you could do a magic trick or some three. You could maybe do some 3-card Monty and steal some shit from people.
Do a trick, boy, or else you're outside the fire tonight.
We would need some entertainment because it's pretty heavy. When the zombie apocalypse comes, you do want a little bit of lightheartedness, and you want to laugh once in a while.
It sounds like he's already regretting shooting you in the face for the milk. Is what it sounds like.
It's like,
now
give me the option to just give it to me first if you just come into our group, and if you play nice, I won't shoot you in the face, and then we can just play together.
This guy does card tricks. We're gonna keep him around. So we're gonna have all the social stuff, obviously, grouping, chat, and stuff. Overall, it's hard to say that it doesn't sound awesome. Reading it on Reddit or reading it on paper. I'm actually excited for it, and it's generally not my type of gameplay. What about you, Troy?
Yeah, it's not typically my type of gameplay either, but aside from the absolutely gorgeous, graphics engine that this thing's obviously going to be on, if they really make the social aspects work and really kind of push the whole community thing, I mean, that's really going to, like I said, aside from the gorgeous graphics, is going to set it apart from everything else out there, and it's going to give them their own little niche to pull players in. I'm interested. I'm going to jump in and take a look. I don't care if it is a giant PvP arena. I'm going to be in it, and I want to see what's up. I'm going to let somebody gank me before I decide whether or not I like it.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. Now, Gary, you're the big-time Star Wars Galaxies guy, and we remember when Smedley said, hey, welcome home, Star Wars Galaxy fans. So what we know so far, does it sound like SOE's meeting that promise?
I mean, this is the thing. Like, so some players looking for, what were players looking for in SWG? And I think there might be a slight disconnect there because a big draw for SWG was the fact that it was Star Wars, right? He's talking obviously more about gameplay and mechanics and the overall setup. So yeah, it does. I mean, those are the aspects that we really liked about that game. Were the city building, were the wars, the PvP, like the crafting, how it was much more sandboxy. So yes, I mean, I think that if they kind of deliver on all of those things, I think a lot of players will be happy. Um, Not being Star Wars and being zombies.
That's the trick, the IP.
Yeah, I don't, being just some unknown IP. I don't know. I don't think you're going to recapture all those old SWG players, but maybe you can talk to them and maybe they'll understand your connection between SWG and H1Z1.
Yeah, I mean, because originally you were drawn to Star Wars Galaxies because it was Star Wars, not because of all these great systems you heard about. You just look back and remember all those great systems in conjunction with Star Wars Galaxies. So while I can appreciate him teasing it that way, it wasn't the features that originally sold Star Wars Galaxy, so it's a little bit of a tougher sell. You're going to get a couple people like you, big SWG fan, that you hear, I want to try these systems. I'm okay with it being a zombie environment. But I think there's going to be a fair amount of people that say, oh, well, it's not a Star Wars IP. That was the reason I played Star Wars Galaxies, not because the crafting was really cool. So it's a little bit of a tougher sell.
And I really like the gamers it seems like, game developers are really, really, especially MMO developers are really obviously at the point where they're realizing that PvE-centric theme park style MMO is extremely, extremely difficult to still create. And not to say you can't, you've got, Elder Scrolls just came out, you've got WildStar coming out, so their company's still doing it, but at the same time, for a lot of them, they're realizing that this is just incredibly difficult to compete with, and again, compete with the big World of Warcraft because they've got 10 years of content already built out, and players just burn through it so fast. I'm just happy to see that some other companies are finally going back to try and create some games that are much more about the players rather than a developer telling a half-baked story. Let's be honest. I mean, half the writing and the stories that go on in MMOs is pretty shitty. Like, it's not great stuff. It's not like classic, literature here that we're getting. So we're not. So I think if somebody can get it right, players can kind of carve their own story and make their own scenarios and things happen within the world. It could be a lot. It could be really compelling. Now, will these games get the same numbers as World of Warcraft? Probably not. But that should be okay.
And we're going to mention one that's trying to cross the line there a little later and blur the line between sandbox and theme park in ArcheAge.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we're gonna get that in a minute because it's doing exactly that. It's treading that line on both sides, or at least trying to at this point. Speaking of a hard sell, though, Smedley did go on to Reddit and talk about, of course, the business model, which nobody was surprised, free to play, because Sony had already said from here on out, anything MMO like that is going to be free to play. But they did talk about a $19.99 early access, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than Landmark's $100 and $60 packs. I think the base pack for Landmark was $19.99, but yeah, I'll definitely be giving Sony another $20 here at some point.
I thought that was interesting, though. What was all your take on the price drop is so much lower than Landmark? That's the first
one.
Why do you think they went so low?
One, I don't think it's as resource intensive as the Landmark and Next project, but more so than that, I think two is they want more people to check this out. Where EverQuest has the draw of being fricking EverQuest. So there's not a lot of pre-selling that needs to go in there. Again, you have a title H1Z1. Unless you go look it up, you have no idea what it's about. You know it's by Sony because you saw Sony's logo on it. Okay, let me go and check it out a little bit. Now you've got somebody on the website looking it up, and $19.99 is not a hard sell for somebody that was a maybe coming into this, where $100 immediately shuts the door on somebody that's a maybe. So I think it's just a little bit of a different IP. It doesn't have a built-in fan-based draw to it. And this is apparently, from what we're going to talk about in a second here, a lot further along in development than even EQ Next is at this point.
And there had to be a lot of lessons learned in the Landmark pre-sale. What price points can generate the most people? Do we want to try to make the most money we can, or do we want to get the most people we can in it? And $20, I mean, like Byrne said, he's willing to give them $20. Heck, I'm willing to give them $20. Maybe that's just a nice price point that kind of straddles the line and some of the things they've seen with their different price points in Landmark, and they just kind of learned, if we want to accomplish A, this is what we need to do in order to do that.
Yeah, I think you guys are onto something definitely with talking about, the EverQuest franchise being a AAA franchise that people know and associate with, as opposed to something brand new that no one knows. And then if you look at some of the other games out there that it's being going to be related to constantly, like DayZ, like Rust, and things like that, most of those games were all kind of set at like a $20 price point on Steam and things like that. So it makes total sense that they would go a little bit lower.
And it's a different sell here. With Landmark, the newly
Yes.
renamed just Landmark, you were not just buying in to take part in an advanced beta or anything. For those bigger packages, you were legitimately buying in to be core feedback for very early development of the game. Where Smedley took to Twitter and on H1Z1 and said that there's going to be a fully playable game soon. So this is moving really quickly. So it feels like to me
TM.
that soon TM. It feels like to me that this package is very far along, and the 1999 is truly just early access. Where
What do you guys think
in
soon is?
Landmark you were getting another thing. Soon, to me, if we're gonna have a fully playable game soon, I would anticipate early access maybe late this year, winter this year.
Let's see. We've got SOE Live coming up.
That's
Register
what, in
now.
August?
August 14th through the 17th.
Which is a great time to make an announcement, obviously, and they don't have a whole lot going on besides a Landmark update and maybe an update on potential early access for next, which I wouldn't anticipate till 2015 at the earliest.
You saying they opened the doors on H1Z1 early access at SOE Live?
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
Not at all. Like I said, it would give them a lot of bang for their actual convention, and give them something big to talk about, and be like, here you go. Here's what we got. Take a look at it. See
Yeah.
it for yourself.
Well, and Smedley had already said that it would be playable at SOE Live, so I don't think there's any reason not to open the doors at that point. If it's a playable demo for their convention, then it's time to let early access in. So that would put it August, September-ish, maybe a week or two delay after SOE Live to get everything server-wise set up.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they've got.
Yeah.
They've got brewing. They've got something brewing. It sounds interesting.
Here's the cool part: they don't want to sell weapons. They don't want to sell weapons or anything that could help you survive. So none of that infestation stuff where you can buy bats and canned goods and things like that. They do want to sell just the cosmetic stuff because the jerks need to make money.
They say all the right things when it comes to free to play, don't they?
They do
They've
now,
been
which
saying
is
all the
really
right things.
odd because when you look
Yes.
back 3 or 4 years ago, I think all three of us on this panel say Sony Online Entertainment was not the best free-to-play model company to be modeling yourself after.
No.
Yeah, it was
very
way
out
too
of
good.
touch.
It was completely just confusing. Remember, they would have those grids, and it would just be like all these different
Yep.
things, and you didn't know what they were trying to do. I think they've got it now, though. They've got it.
I agree. And if you want to play more than one of their games, that Station Pass is still not a bad option. If you want to be playing more than one of their MMOs. $19.99. I'll be giving it to them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Give us a date, some more footage.
Right?
Let's see some more.
You know what's less than $19.99, Gary?
A Bugatti.
No. But Hulu Plus is less than $19.99. In fact, it's free for 2 weeks. If you want to use that URL, happy to have Hulu Plus as a sponsor here. huluplus.com/gamebreaker. Make sure you use that URL because it's going to give you 2 free weeks. The normal trial version is only 1 week. Now, I know you guys, all of you guys on watching the show here and on the show have already tried Hulu on your computer probably a while ago. Hulu Plus is a lot more than that. Obviously, you've got your shows like Modern Family, The Daily Show, Family Guy, Mindy Project. You got some South Park episodes. You could catch up on every episode of things like Nashville and Lost that are over. And it's all ad-free with kids programming as well. 2-week free trial just for using that URL. Not only that, if you have Xbox, PlayStation, Roku, Smart TV, basically anything that streams, for crying out loud, you can use
All the set-top boxes.
Yeah,
all the
every
Chromecast,
set-top box
everything.
now.
I've got it on my Apple TV, my Chromecast, iPad, and iPhone.
You could watch it on your iPod
Xbox.
or your iPad while you're in the bathroom, Gary.
Yes, I do. I do that. I completely will admit that I do that.
Did you check out Deadbeat here? Oh my
Oh yes, the show about the pot smoker who speaks to the ghosts. Yes.
He sees ghosts. There's 10 episodes. They just added them like a day or two ago. Definitely worth a look. Yeah, a pot smoking guy. He's just talking to ghosts. Cool thing is, after the 2-week free trial, not $19.99 a month, $7.99 a month. Gets you all the shows anytime, anywhere. Sign up using our URL here. That's huluplus.com/gamebreaker. You'll get full access, completely free, and 2 weeks free trial instead of the normal 1 week free trial.
Game Breaker exclusive.
Exclusive. A lot of people ask, how can you help support Game Breaker? You do it. One way is by supporting our sponsors. Happy to have Hulu Plus on there. Use that URL. Get yourself 2 free weeks and a great rate after that for tons of entertainment. Moving on here, we've got we talked about Elder Scrolls for the last couple of shows, and Gary, you missed them. I know you're a big fan. A big fan. Before we get into a couple things that some people are talking about on the internet, you want to give us your overview of the game and what your thoughts are, since you haven't had a chance to for the last few weeks?
Overview. Oh my god.
I mean, you're loving yourself some Elder Scrolls.
It's going to be like a 4-hour show. You might have to field questions for me to keep this under control. I am. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I really. There are things I just love about it. I'm playing quite a bit of it. I'd say it's what I'm playing pretty much exclusively right now. I love the PvE right now a lot. Like, I just like the fact that, like I said it since the beginning, is I feel like they've really figured out a way to bring sort of the RPG element back into the MMO, and the stories are better than the norm, I feel like, in the genre. I feel like the way that they deliver them through voiceover and the phasing that they do with NPCs, I think, is really clever, and I think really just gives it's just a really immersive world. I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan for a long time.
You even become a quest reader again.
I love it. Like, I mean, I think that's the best part of it. I think for people who are clicking through them and not really paying attention to the storylines are really missing out on what the game is about.
Oh yeah, they're missing a good 50% of the game just right there.
Yeah, and it's almost it kind of make people that come to me and say, like, oh, I'm not really having as good of a time, and you sound like you're having fun. Like, what are you liking so much about it? And that is probably one of the largest aspects. Like, okay, well, the first question I say is, are you clicking through the quests, or are you actually like listening to them and paying attention to them? Like, oh, I'm just clicking through them. I'm like, well, that's part of the problem. So, I don't know. How are you guys?
Gary's other reply to them is play in first person, which I still cannot bring myself to do in an MMO. I can't do it.
I play entirely in first person unless I'm fighting some big boss or something, or PvP.
I mean, for crying out loud, you did in Final Fantasy too. It's not just an Elder Scrolls thing. You're really digging the first person MMO.
RP that shit up.
And most people that are in the game, the purchase, the collector sets or whatever, they're enjoying it. I'm still on the fence after 2 weeks, pretty much. I'm still.
What are you on the fence about? Where are you?
So I set aside bugs and stuff like that, right? Because while I shouldn't, I understand that it's going to take them longer. I feel that they should have been taken care of. A lot of these little bugs that are very early in the game, those really should have been taken care of. But I'm not going to hold it against my overall judgment on do I enjoy the game or not. And a lot of the internet's having problems with the bugs and stuff because there are a ton of them. Obviously, I like the story. I'm enjoying the side stories as well as the main story. I'm really, really enjoying the exploration aspect of this. If you're just bouncing where your quests are going, you're missing a lot.
You're missing a whole other aspect of the game. That's another thing. I had a buddy just start recently, and he was doing some quests, and then he made some references, wondering where to go or something. I said, why don't you just go run someplace?
Pick a direction and go.
And that's one of the tips on one of the screens. It tells you to do it. I was like, why don't you just go run a direction? And he's like, oh, you can do that? I'm like, try it.
So those are like the two things I really, really enjoy about the game. On the other side of the fence are things like I am not very, very fond of the combat. Not to say that it's bad. It's not like Secret World bad when Secret World first launched and the combat.
Oh, don't even.
It's nowhere near. It's nowhere near that. But it's for what it is. I just don't think it's as tight as it needs to be. I feel like a lot of the time especially with the very limited action set, until you start skilling up and morphing things, you spend a fair amount of time the first X hours of the game clicking 2 different buttons in most cases. It's not very engaging until you've taken the time to level up a lot of those skills and start morphing them and then putting them together in combinations. Again, it's kind of like they did with the beginning of the game, right? The starter islands weren't that great and people were judging the game, but when they got out in the open, they were really enjoying it. I think the skill set suffers from the same thing. You spend so long at the beginning of the game doing the same 2 or 3 actions that it becomes very boring and tedious, and if you don't know that, hey, there's a light at the end of that tunnel with a really exhaustive skill set, you've just got to put in the time to find the points to do it, it's very easy to just drop that. I also hate the way the character jumps, and that's stupid, but it really frickin' bugs me. It's so floaty that when I hit the space bar, I feel like I'm casting some sort of slow fall spell. Everything that I don't like is control-based or menu-based, and everything I do like are the things that are really
from a
important.
Final Fantasy 14 original player. That's kind of.
Oh, come on. I hated the original Final Fantasy XIV. Don't hold that against me. I hated that piece of. So everything that I don't like is very control or UI driven, and everything I do like is content driven. There are some pieces of content, though, that aren't executing the way they were originally designed. Justin Kennedy did a great video, if you want to take a look at Dark Anchors and how they're kind of a joke right now. Did a great video on his YouTube channel. Check that one out. Because some of those cool pieces of content, they are not working as intended right now.
I think that's actually a good question. I want to actually, are they literally not working as intended because they are kind of useless right now.
Yeah.
And if people don't understand why, it's because one thing is they don't scale with the amount of players that are around them, and then sometimes there are so many people around them that you cannot even tap any of the mobs, and you get 0 loot because they're just dead before you can do anything, and then you're just sort of like, whoa, what happened? I don't really feel like I did anything there, and then you just kind of leave. I've kind of stopped doing them completely.
I think right now they're just happy that the Dark Acres are even opening, because for the longest time they would always be open and nothing would ever happen. So I mean, at least there's bad guys coming out of them now, I guess.
What a lot of people online right now are really, really hating is the guild store. And Troy, you and I touched on it last week, that it's kind of a mess. It's really a very tiny auction house. You can't search. You can't put a filter on it. It sucks. This week, the developers tweeted this out, and I am showing you apparently the wrong screen because I wanted to show the link, not the hyperlink. This guy right here on the Twitters, from the Elder Scrolls Online team, looking to buy, sell, and trade in-game goods and services in Elder Scroll Online, then TSO Elites at TSO Elites new marketplace is for you. And it's a link to the TSOElite.com forums for players to go back and forth selling items. Really?
I take it from your tone of voice that
Really?
you're not happy with this.
Really? I didn't know how to feel about this one at first, because I do like the aspect of not, and maybe I'm just old-fashioned in this one, I do like the aspect of the answers not always being somewhere in the game, whether that's crafting or selling or anything. I do like the aspect of having to actually reach out to another player and not Googling something or just going to an interface in the game. So at first I was like, you know what? That's not very convenient to use to sell things. But that's a decent way to get communities starting to interact. And Troy and Gary hook up with me on this site, and they buy 1 or 2 things from me, and they like what they got. They like the price I gave it. And so now I'm kind of their go-to guy, you know? And we may never have met in-game had that not happened. I do like the social aspect of what this creates. I don't
love the fact that it's forums.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that it's a forum. It needs to be an auction house type design, whether you want to put it in-game or out-of-game, fine. I don't like that it's a forum.
For a forum layout, if you go to it, I mean, it's actually laid out pretty well, and it does a good job. But like you said, do you really want forums to be the tool that you use to do things like that? And one of the good aspects I think that have come out of the guild store so far, and not that there's a whole lot good about guild stores, but within the market guilds that I'm a part of, there's been a lot more interaction in the guild chats in those markets. And there's been a lot of, hey, I'm looking for this. I want so many of these. Well, how much do you want to pay for them? Or how much are you selling for? There's a lot of negotiation between players, and that's been a lot of fun. But that being said, the guild store is just not doing what it was meant to do, and the fact that they've got a third-party forum out there somewhere that's set up to do the things that their guild store should be doing, that's not good at all.
And chat's
this
pointing
should be like
out
a tool to the side.
Chat's pointing out, Gary, a really good point is that for a game that's so dependent on immersion to get you into it, this totally breaks that.
Take you out to a website. I agree. I think it's a Band-Aid or something. I don't think they've got this built out. I think they're going to probably add some other stuff. I mean, the guild stuff obviously needs a little bit of work. But
yeah, I mean, if you need to advertise that a third party is doing this for you, there's probably something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I guess what you'd like to see is some sort of player-driven player store, like a personal store. But that always also adds some crazy conflicts and things like that, because then you have to leave persistent things in the world that stay when you're logged off and things like that. They probably want to avoid that. But that kind of, it seems like what they're trying to do is they're trying to create player interaction and being social with each other, which is a good thing, right? So I was actually I've been asking around. It doesn't seem like this place has kind of cropped up yet, but I was almost hoping that like a city somewhere, like, one of the major cities becomes the hub for players to just stand around and shout. I
think the original idea was that some of the keeps, when your market guild claims a keep, that was supposed to sort of turn into that. I think was the original idea, was that the PvP keeps in Cyrodiil were supposed to turn into that.
That could be really interesting if something like that happens, and then who's got control of them, and if Troy's the best creator of this sort of thing, you know where to go. Like, that could be kind of cool, but yeah, I think they've dropped the ball a little bit when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I tend to agree with you. It sounds like a little bit of a Band-Aid, because I can't imagine that they really want to be advertising a third party doing something like this for them.
It still doesn't bother me so much that I don't love the game. Just gonna put it out there.
I will get over it.
Finally today, Tryon Worlds English Alpha.
Wait! I do have a sticking point. I want to talk about one thing, and I want to know your opinion.
Oh, here we go.
You guys think about the group? I haven't talked to you guys in weeks. So I need to know. What about the grouping?
It's terrible.
The grouping is still
it's a mess.
But so now that you guys have spent more time with it, why do you think that they've gone this route? It makes sense from a design standpoint with how they're doing the phasing and the different NPCs and the quest lines and stuff like that. But the bottom line is it makes it incredibly difficult to try and play the game with any of your buddies.
You want to know my honest answer? I don't think it's done. I don't think all the ideas behind the grouping mechanics that they want to execute here, I don't think they're done. But they ran up against a date and had to put it out. We posted on Gamebreaker, you saw it, the video of the dungeon run where you can literally troll the entire dungeon and parties can't do a damn thing about it. Not only is making the groups kind of messy, but the mechanics to manage a group aren't even fully fleshed out in the system. I think that they have more that they want to do with this and clean some of this up, but they ran up against a date.
Yeah, it's got a long way to go, because when the game was initially launched and they were really first starting to hype it up and talk about it, there was a lot of PR speak about how awesome grouping would be and how the servers would automatically put you with people who want to play the way you want to play and how great of a multiplayer experience it would be. But at the end of the day, when you're out questing, it's a single player game, and it's hard to work around that. It's hard to make it not a single player experience out in the world like that.
Everybody's a freaking hero.
That's that is right. That's the side effect of telling that story, which is can they actually meld the two together? I don't know if it's the fact that stuff hasn't been implemented. I think that's just the way the game is actually going to be played. Again, I'm still having a great time with it, though. It's not going to stop me from playing.
My new main MMO.
Can we move on now? We've been getting yelled at a lot for the ESO show not launching yet, and us talking about it, having the temerity to talk about a new MMO on TWIMMO.
Oh,
shame.
Tryon Worlds English Alpha for ArcheAge has begun, and Mr. Gannon, I have just one question for you and Troy. Do
Yeah,
you
it is.
do you believe? Do you believe? New website. I'm gonna scroll it while you guys chat.
I spent some time about 2 weeks ago. I went and visited the Tryon Studios up in Northern California. And I actually got to play some ArcheAge. Actually, got to create a character, and I got to play on Scott Hartzman's character, running around on his character. It was kind of funny. It was just all tricked out. It's very interesting. I can't even kind of get into the. You're looking at the classes and stuff right now, and the skills. Until you get in, you can't even imagine how complex the system is and how interesting and how you can meld and kind of create a character almost any way you want to. And it's really almost bizarre at first because you're just like, you can literally mix and match and do almost anything you want to do.
And that's exactly why I do still believe, because there was so much on the hype train so long ago that I saw that made me excited for this game, and I just want to be able to get in and it just blow me away and be so much more than even what I thought it was going to be. And if that's the case, then this game absolutely has a chance. I mean, this could really be a big deal.
There's all these synergies that go on between the different systems, the skill system, and it's just it's really bizarre. You can, it's dare I say, it's almost as if like taking almost Rift's soul system and taking it to the next level.
Oh wow!
'Cause it's even wackier than like how like Rift's got those souls that are just kind of like outlandish and wacky, and you're just like, that's not a traditional class. It kind of like even takes it to the next level.
You know,
And
you're
yet
saying the right things to get the two guys you're talking to excited about this.
and yet they still work. The classes work really well, it seems, and like So I got to see. So I started playing. I started a brand new character. Actually, I'm going to be playing some soon because I am in the alpha.
You son of a.
Oh,
Sorry.
would that leave you as the odd man out, Burn, who's not in the alpha?
Are you in it too, Troy? Get the.
Easy-
I hate this show.
I've not
wasn't
had a
around
chance to jump
yesterday. We
in
had that
yet,
memo.
but
Bart,
I
I'll
will this
hook you
weekend.
up. I'll get you in the. Don't worry, I got you. I got you on this one. I got you.
All
Got
right,
you.
See,
got you.
I love TWIMMO again.
Um,
Yeah, Gary does sound
So-
different, chat. he's on a phone, a sat phone in the Ozark Mountains.
the Ozark Mountains, yes, from an undisclosed area. So it's. I'm really interested to see how the PvP stuff works out. I got to see some of the building stuff. I saw some of the cities where some of the I mean, what I got to see, was only internal alpha people. I don't even know if friends were in at that point, but it was mostly the Tryon, office playing together. So I got to see what they had built and things like that. So it was small. Again, it looks really cool. Like you can build anywhere. There's plots. There's a lot of customization. I started out a brand new character, and what's interesting is you can play it as a PvE game. There's tons of quests, much more than I kind of thought. I thought it was going to be much more like just thrust you into this like open world kind of thing, but you can play it like a traditional sort of, dare I say, theme park MMO, or you can just bypass all of it and just kind of like go do your own thing. So, and that's like pretty much from level 1.
And that's the aspect that I like. We talked about it earlier, treading the line between the theme park and the sandbox. I like that if I want to go and just follow a story for a few hours, I can. And then if I just want to say screw all and do whatever, I have the freedom to do that too. And I'm still progressing both ways. Where if you're right now, I play a lot of theme park MMOs, and if I could just go do whatever, my progression is cut to 0 in most cases. I'm just screwing
you can do that.
around.
I mean, you can pretty much do that. You can just you could just bypass the entire starter area if you really want to. I mean, it's not going to be super easy. You're probably going to want to get through some of that stuff. But if you just want to start, resource gathering, building stuff, PvPing, whatever you want to do, you can pretty much go for it. I'm excited. I think the stuff on the naval ships and stuff is going to be pretty interesting. They showed some of that stuff off. I did have a bunch of players to do that, but big naval battles with ship-on-ship battles with you could have, I forget what the number is, but like 8 or 10 people, because each of the cannons can be manned by people in your guild and friends and things like that. That's all really cool stuff as well. It does some really interesting things. I don't know. We got to dig into it a little bit more. We've got access to Alpha. There's no NDA. That's a good sign, right?
Yes, definitely. And Chad is saying this the best, though. Royaltree, kudos. I couldn't think of a way to word this, and then all of a sudden you did. With ArcheAge, though, I get the feeling that there's so much to do that I don't know if it's all going to work together very well.
How so? What do you mean?
So if you have absolute freedom to do all of these different things, it would have a tendency, if it's not seamlessly put together so that there's a reason to go do this, go do A, because it can influence what happens in B and C when you play those aspects of the game. If you don't have that connection between all of these features, between the crafting and the naval, leading to a naval battle, leading to grouping, leading to questing, if you don't have those all in sync so that they feel like one piece, it's very easy for this to start to feel like 6 different games. Right? Like you're going into the crafting because you're going to create a bunch of stuff and you like that aspect of the game. If there's no logical connection, or at least economical connection that makes sense between...
There is, though. I mean, that's so...
You know,
so again,
we hope there is. I mean, because in
very
other
limited.
games like Final Fantasy XIV, the crafting makes sense to do, but the economy's a mess. There's no point to doing the crafting. And if that type of thing happens in this type of game, you have so many splintered different things to do. If they don't connect at all, it feels like I'm going to log into ArcheAge and what one of 6 minigames am I going to play today?
Yeah, I mean, in my limited time with the game, it definitely does not feel like that. Like I checked out a few different aspects of it, and it really feels like one big cohesive game. It feels like it all makes sense. With that being said, like, you know, it's the end game of the, you know, call it end game, call it other. You like, again, you could start this portion of the game pretty much early on if you wanted to, but it seems like, you know, the overall big picture for ArcheAge is going to be player-driven content. Big wars, battles, PvP for resources and things of that nature. Building stuff, burning other people's houses down, taking their stuff, trying to get the cool resources, building ships and battles. Like, there is all the PvE elements, there's dungeon running, there's questing, there's all that kind of stuff. There's also a lot of RP elements in the game. So I think RPers are really going to like the game. A lot of freedom there as well, so they haven't forgotten those people. So it seems to be offering a lot of things and aspects and mechanics that a lot of games on the market right now are not offering.
Mr. Gary Gannon, somewhere in the Ozark Mountains. You can follow him on Twitter at Gary Gannon. Thank you for joining us via sat phone today, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Troy Blackburn, follow him on the Twitters at Noobfridge, NOOBFRIDGE. He'll link you up to all the things he's writing over on Gamebreaker and Free to Play and about 900 other sites and all the videos. He'll tell you where it's at.
We will have ArcheAge stuff coming out on Gamebreaker next week.
Nice. I'm Mike Byrne. You can follow me at MagicMan1, MAGICKMANN1. Of course, keep it locked and dialed on Gamebreaker TV. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook. Do all the usual likings so that you know what we're doing and when. Until next week, gang, stay safe. We'll see you on the servers.
Gamebreaker TV.